Bricky is basically the guy who got me into Warhammer, so I'm super interested to see what he thinks of Warhammer 3. I've been absolutely loving the game so far. I mean, if I didn't love the game, I wouldn't have streamed for 6 hours without realizing it. It's just that good. You know, you just gotta go one more turn. But I don't know when this video came out. This might be a review of like the early copies of Warhammer 3, which from Mandalore's video were not very good. But yeah, if you guys haven't already, go and subscribe to Bricky. He makes amazing, incredible content. And I honestly wouldn't be here if it wasn't for him.
Hello everyone, my name is Bricky, currently running from corn from painting myself purple. Now, this might come as a surprise, but
Sponsor?
I like Warhammer.
This is basically the same reaction I would get if I ever said that. All of my friends make fun of me that I make like a bunch of Warhammer content now. Look, it's cool, alright? I enjoy it a lot. I don't think there's anything really wrong with that. But, you know, they'll continue to tease me regardless.
I know, shocking, insane, ridiculous, crazy, one might say.
True.
But I can't help it. Something about a galaxy filled with depression and war just makes me so happy and giddy on the inside. However, I don't really know a whole lot about Warhammer Fantasy. My main source of information comes from 40k, and I know fantasy's kind of around, and some things have a little bit of overlap, such as, well, mainly just the demons, but overlap regardless.
I didn't know that Bricky wasn't all too knowledgeable about fantasy. I mean, I originally got into Warhammer through 40k, and I mean, I'll definitely revisit that from time to time. There's still a lot that I need to learn, and a bunch of games in the 40k universe that I've yet to play. Rogue Trader and Dawn of War. But I'm honestly really glad that I took the time to explore a bit of fantasy, because fantasy, I don't know, there's just something about it. Is it just because I prefer it more than sci-fi? Not really. No. I really love sci-fi. I think it's just because fantasy has lizardmen. Yeah. It's probably the main reason why. And also the fact that Total War has kind of been a game that I've been interested in like ever since I learned of it, which was like several years back. I don't remember exactly which Total War game I saw. It might have been Shogun or like Total War Rome or something like that. But I've always enjoyed strategy games, and fantasy had a Total War game in it, so the two just kind of merged together to create this perfect duo that I could spend endless amounts of hours playing and never be bored of it. Still waiting on Total War 40k, if that ever happens. I think there have been rumors and stuff, and I feel like it's inevitable. But whenever that drops, I'll be sure to be there.
For a while, it didn't really interest me much. I'm not really a fantasy kind of guy, you know. Skyrim, New Vegas, though, beautiful. But, you know, the Total War games are pretty darn popular, and they've always had a huge following. So I thought, wait, Total War Warhammer 3 is coming out. Perhaps this is the time when I finally delve into fantasy. You would think I would actually be really big in the Total War series, because I like my strategy games. I like my RTSs, like my Command and Conquerors. I love my 4X games, like, well, it's mainly just Endless Space, but I love Endless Space. So this hybrid, this grand strategy game seemed really interesting, especially in the Warhammer universe, but I never played a Total War game before. I just never did. But you know, Warhammer, new game, Adeptus Ridiculous is kind of popping off. Maybe it's about time I check it out. The question was just, when?
Now.
Just like Singed from Arcane. This game is really stupidly insane.
Hello?
What was that?
Right now? Yeah, I can do that.
Yeah, right now. Is this sponsored by
This
CA?
video is sponsored by Total War Warhammer 3.
Hell yeah, dude.
Total War Warhammer 3 is the third installment in the Total War Warhammer franchise, a slew of very popular grand strategy games. The third installment allows you to play as 8 separate factions, all with their own stories and their own special...
Okay. We got the timeline. This is before Immortal Empires dropped, yeah. So is this does this mean the only mode is Realms of Chaos? I guess so.
Campaigns and skirmishes. It has improved co-op features with up to 8 players taking synchronous turns, and a well improved and just really darn good prologue that we'll talk about really soon to really help you get into the Total War Warhammer series. And not only is it available on Steam, but it is also available on the Xbox's PC version of the Game Pass. So yeah, I got sponsored. They reached out to me. Let's fucking go, dude. I'm really excited. Of course, naturally, my opinions will not change on the game. I will give you an honest opinion, but hey, I should also.
Yeah, I feel like well, I'm not exactly at a size for that, but if we ever did get a sponsor, we'd only accept anything where they would allow us like full creative freedom to tell people our actual opinion about the game. You know, I don't really enjoy the sponsored segments where people just kind of drop like the generic same lines about some sort of trashy gotcha game that they don't even play probably. So yeah, I can respect this sponsor.
State something very important. This is not a full review. About maybe 15 minutes in the game, I realized I wasn't gonna be able to do a full review. There is a lot. Oh my God.
Yeah.
I can barely do a review.
I mean, if you want a full review, go and watch Mandalore's. His was incredible, but I think it's like an hour or so long. I forgot. It's been a while since I reacted to that one, but it was really good. Covered it, pretty much everything.
On a singular faction. This is much more initial impressions, first impressions, and hey, what's it like playing a Total War Warhammer game for someone who, well, you know, never did.
Doesn't play, yeah.
A consistent stream of consciousness. Bricky consciousness, which is a violent thing. So let's begin, and we're going to be talking about this probably quite a lot. Prologue.
Uh-oh, spaghetti-o!
So it's a little rare to have a strategy game that has a really solid tutorial. Normally, there's just things you kind of feel your way through with a lot of time, and while there are some tutorials that are better than others, overall, it's a lot of just doing a mission and then a ton of hand-holding with it, kind of pointing to stuff whenever it was time to use them. This is probably the best prologue I've played in a strategy game. Just flat out the best.
I have to agree, because like the other game that immediately comes to my mind when it comes to like to the tutorial thing is XCOM 2, and that is probably the formula for most turn-based strategy games, where it's like, oh, this is how you move your unit here, shoot that person, oh no, this is what happens when your other unit dies, but also we'll mix in a little bit of story to like get you on your feet and let you know where we currently are in the timeline, right? But for this particular tutorial in Warhammer 3, the story was actually like really good. Like the build up to the final reveal, I really enjoyed it, and I honestly did not see it coming. Of course, I'm not gonna spoil it here if you haven't played it, but I highly recommend doing it. I believe the other Warhammer games didn't have a tutorial, and I'm so glad that they included one in Warhammer 3.
It's a long prologue to begin with. It is a multiple-hour prologue, but not only does it really show you how to do all of the various kinds of aspects of Total War, both the overworld kind of 4X style and the actual battles RTS style, but it actually serves as the main catalyst for the entire story of the game. Great voice acting, you play as Yuri Barkov of the Kislev army faction thing, which is kind of like a amalgamous group of a bunch of Slavic countries all just kind of mashed into one. The Kislev have a god, and it's a bear god named Ursun, and Ursun would always do this big old roar and get rid of the winter, and he hasn't done that for quite a while now, so people are starving and dying and their god is silent, and that's not good. However, the main character Yuri has heard from good old Ursun, and Ursun is in trouble, and so you need to venture out to go save your bear god, and that's the overall prologue. Your main enemy is the forces of chaos, all the forces of chaos, Nurgle, Tzeentch, Khorne, and Slaanesh, and overall they kind of seem like they make up the major factions of this game. Chaos is a huge part of the game, whether for or against, and so setting them up as both the main villain and how they corrupt the younger mortals and stuff is a pretty good start for the prologue, and that teaches you all the various gameplay aspects of it. I was kind of interested to see that the 4X style of it it's like each RTS is contained in the separate areas, where if I was going to cities and civilization or planets and endless space, here we have like fortresses, and in those fortresses you can build them out. You can give them more upgrades for more income or more growth, which allows them to upgrade even more and produce more income, or perhaps training areas for higher troops or better troops, upgrades, etc. And these are all contained. You also have heroes, so there's a little bit of like character customization in there as well. Your hero, let's say Yuri, for example, has different gear you can put on him to make him better, either in the 4X campaign map or in the actual fighting itself. In fact, he himself is like kind of like a playable piece on a chessboard, except he is attached to a giant army that goes with him, and you kind of move him around as a piece in the overworld. That's how you go attack other armies and attack different settlements, etc. When you actually do a fight, there is an auto resolve option, but that's generally only saved for when you're going to just absolutely demolish the enemy, and that's the only time I ever really use it, because when you don't use it, you have instead a big old RTS style actual ground battle where all the forces you've accumulated, like the forces the enemy has, and that's where all the major skill comes from in terms of moving units in certain areas and attacking certain things here and activating abilities when you can.
Oh no. Just commenting on the gameplay in the background. Yeah, those light cav units from Kislev are absolute trash. I did recruit a few of them, and then I guess we kind of just used them as bait. I only knew that they were pretty bad from the get-go because of chat, thankfully, but yeah, they really don't perform, do they? But maybe I should pay a bit more attention to what's going on in the background here, because it is kind of interesting to see somebody who has played other RTS games before try out Total War. Because from what I know and learned from the countless videos that we watched about the game, I would never do this.
And that's all the nitty-gritty ground combat. It doesn't require the twitch movement of, say, StarCraft or Command & Conquer, where everything is moving really, really quick, but it's more like an overall macro, in my opinion. Your hero character, Yuri, for example, is an absolute monster. He destroys everything, and he's super tough and tanky and all that kind of stuff, because the hero characters kind of have to be if they're wading through the thick of it. They're very lead from the front. And then you have your various levels of troops that you either upgraded or built prior, and having the right composition is important, because you might have your basic, sword and shield ground troop, and they're pretty good at wading into the thick of it and getting into a big bloody battle, but they might struggle against, cavalry that slams into them. So if you want to deal with the cavalry, you might want to get, say, pikemen, spears and stuff, halberds, things that get it from range and can really stop a cavalry charge.
Bricky's bringing up a lot of good points about how the game works, essentially. The best way that I could describe it was like the rock, paper, scissors thing, where there's a unit that's going to beat another unit, but it's going to lose to a different unit. So you're going to have to build your army in a particular way and fight the battles that are in your favor. Personally, I feel like armies that are just super balanced around everything could be fun to play, but they're also not the most efficient, when instead you could have like several different armies with a particular specialization. Or if you know that you're going to fight against a particular faction and they have certain traits, then you'd build your army to counter them. Like getting a bunch of armor-piercing units when you know that the dwarves are about to declare war on you and stuff like that. As a completely new player to the game, it was kind of a bit of a learning curve to figure out, what the best units are and which ones counter which. But just because you select a unit that counters a different unit doesn't mean they're going to do very well at it without some sort of support, or there might be a better option because the stat line is just bad. And that is kind of just up to trial and error, to be honest. If, for whatever reason, there's somebody new to Total War watching this video, I highly recommend looking up some channels like Zarkovich, who do formation guides and battle strategies and whatnot, because those tutorial videos definitely helped me understand like how to maneuver the troops and how to utilize them to their greatest potential, which units might counter which, and just everything about the RTS section, which can be really, really confusing to most new people or to like anybody who's played other RTS games before and not Total War games.
in its tracks. But of course, they might not be as good in combat as the sword guys. You have archers who, you know, fire from a distance and they have an ammunition supply, but you know, you get too close to them and they might get wailed on. There's flying units and ambushing units and sometimes just big artillery units and gigantic freaking monsters that wade in and just destroy everything. It's all the possibilities there. Combine that with special abilities and like spells from your other hero characters. For instance, there's like a Frost Maiden in the Kislev faction that sends out ice everywhere. There's some really cool depth in there. Despite the fact that I just, you know, rambled on a whole lot of stuff about it, I haven't even scratched the surface of depth. I haven't quite reached that level yet because these are long campaigns and to get those big unit of masses in these giant battles, it takes a bit. You really need to get your force up and heavy. Of course, when you win a battle, you can go ahead and replenish your forces or go send it towards the next major settlement and then try to raid said settlement. And when you raid a settlement, what are you gonna do with it? You can take it over, you can just ransack it, you can pillage and murder everyone there, depends on your faction. This is all explained to you in the prologue. You've also got missions you can do that give you rewards. There's your income, and then there's your upkeep of income. Soldiers cost money to train, but they also cost money to, you know, upkeep because they cost food and things of that nature, and you're managing all your different areas. And like I said,
it's a lot.
This is the surface, and each faction plays massively different depending on which you're rolling with. The prologue actually continues with Yuri.
I've played almost like over 120 hours by now at this point. I've only played 2 factions. It's insane how the mechanics are. And like each faction, well, I should say race. I played a few factions within those races, but like each faction itself can have its own unique mechanic too. Oh man, the amount of depth this game has is just, I don't know. I don't even have words to describe it. We're not even talking about any of the mods either. Like this is just the base game.
Slowly being corrupted by chaos as he makes his way through, utilizing a sword and reading a cursed book, etc., to get their way over to Urson. And when he gets to Urson,
Yuri.
well,
I announce you.
Oh.
So it begins.
the man is easily corruptible. I must say the quality of a lot of these cutscenes is pretty top notch. The voice acting in this game, almost across the board, especially for some of the Chaos factions, is just incredible. It's really well done, and there's a lot of emphasis and effort put into each of the characters.
Let's get down to business to control the world.
Yes! Yes! So once you've played the prologue, which is basically a campaign in its own right, and the entire setup for the story of Total War Warhammer 3, then you can go ahead and jump on one of the 8 factions that are available to you. These
You know, at some point I probably should try out Realms of Chaos just to like see what it is about. I know that most people play Immortal Empires anyways, but you know, it's part of the game. Might as well give it a shot at some point. We'll see.
Factions are the Kislev I already mentioned, Cathay, the dragon one, the big dragon, big terracotta warriors and stuff. Them. There's the ogres. They're big and fat and eat a lot. You got the Chaos Undivided, and then you got the 4 Chaos gods themselves: Nurgle, Khorne, Slaanesh, and Tzeentch. And they all play, well, about how you expect. I played 5 of the 8 so far. I did Kislev, of course, in the prologue. I did Cathay for a bit, Nurgle, Khorne, and Slaanesh. So I started with Nurgle. That was a mistake. See, each campaign has their own major objectives. And for Chaos, normally the option is just to spread corruption in some way. And for
Nurgle is an interesting faction that I'm a little bit hesitant to even try because of how unique its mechanics are. And like the cycle of the buildings and whatnot. Yeah, I don't know how well I'd fare managing that. And I feel like Nurgle out of like the 4 Chaos Gods is probably one of the weaker ones. But in the hands of a good player, well, obviously they could utilize Nurgle very well. But it's just, Nurgle goes just slow movement and then just weird buildings that kind of restrict your recruitment. And then you recruit units not at full health too. It's a lot.
For Nurgle, it's of course spreading sickness, and they have all their own various ways of playing the game. The main character, I love him. I love him so much. This Nurgle guy, he just grabs stuff from his stomach and throws them at you, and he's got this like giant Nurgle like mobility scooter looking thing. I love it. But you know, Nurgle as a faction, they play a lot like Nurgle. You know, when you collect any kind of major fortress, it goes through this big cycle of life, death, and rebirth instead of a normal
it's a cool system.
And then you have these insane plagues to spread your sickness around the area. You can create new plagues and mix and match disease and symptoms and how it's spread. And all your army is pretty slow and not super strong, but the tanky is all hell because you're Nurgle. And I lost my mind. It was too much. I had information overload to the max. The cycle of rebirth.
I can imagine.
Different
dude, I mean, even I probably wouldn't want to get into this. I mean, I probably want to try out some of the other Chaos factions first before trying to tackle Nurgle and figuring out like the best cycles and whatnot. But as a new player, oh my god, I can't even imagine how overwhelmed you'd feel.
Kinds of structures and making all the different kinds of corruptions and plagues, and then the chaos gods themselves with their own afflictions and the way the army construction, and it was a lot. It was a lot, but it was kind of cool because the mobility scooter
chair.
So I took a break from Nurgle for a bit, and I tried out the cafe group. Theirs is interesting. They've got a definitely not Great Wall of China that is being assaulted by many forces of chaos. Oh crap, I forgot about the whole storyline point. Damn it. All right, side note. What's the story you wish for? The whole point of the story is this old ass man got this book, and the book is pretty mean to him. And so he's going and trying to get one drop of the bear god's blood to free him from the book. So he's trying to find the most powerful ally to take the god and, you know, do whatever they want with it. So, you know, you go to Kislev, and they obviously want, you know, Urson back for obvious reasons. You go to Cathay, and they have their own reasons for knowledge. And then Nurgle thinks, oh, I can make a god stew, corruption, and Slaanesh wants the soul, and Khorne wants the skulls. So you're bartering with each and every one of them. That's why these people are on your side. Okay, out of the way. But Grand Cafe has their giant wall, and you need to go ahead and deal with some of your rival factions around it, reinforce said wall, keep chaos off, and they have all these different gameplay mechanics to go with them. For example, their main one is the concept of harmony, the yin and the yang. And if you're too far building either buildings or research or units that are in the yin side, the yang suffers, and vice versa. So when you're able to keep them perfectly in line in harmony, you get massive bonuses. So it's like this constant balancing act. Not only that, but you have this awesome compass that lets you get different benefits depending on which way you want to go and at what time. And you even have like an Oregon Trail route that plays a lot like Oregon Trail. You send a caravan to get stuff. That's how you get more resources, and shit might go wrong there. So, you know, make your decisions wisely. They were also a pretty interesting faction. I really liked their units. Instead of Kislev, that felt kind of like a little more jack of all trades, everything felt really specialized with Cafe, and being able to have very specific units do very specific things. I felt like my mind was tested a bit more in the RTS style of it, but the overworld part was still, it's a little bit much for Bricky brain.
Gotcha. That makes sense. I mean, just managing the yin and the yang over also the army formations and whatnot would be a lot. I mean, thinking of it, like with Kislev, it's kind of good for new players because of the hybrid units who can do ranged and melee as well. So they're basically good really against anything. But with Cathay, the yin and the yang kind of enforces a play style where you would want to have your armies in a formation that utilizes that to its full benefit. So that's kind of where you go from just the stat versus stat, like good unit or rock, paper, scissors, to formations and strong formations that can protect your key units and specialty units and whatnot. I think it's cool, and I'd love to try my hand at them very soon, potentially.
So I was promptly informed by my Twitch chat, maybe you should try Khorne, Bricky. Khorne's pretty simple. I tried Khorne.
just war.
Korn's pretty simple. Korn features our main man, Skarbrand, as the main character. And Skarbrand does not fuck about.
One-man army, honestly.
It's a one-man army.
It's going to be so cool once I play Korn.
And just rolling him across the plains is a legitimate strategy. And Korn,
sometimes you just,
what's Korn like to do? You know,
just
Korn
want to
likes to kill, likes to murder. Guess what you're doing in Korn? You're doing combat. You're doing almost nothing but combat. You are killing everyone you see. You immediately wage war against every other faction, and you just go ham on them. And then, what else does Korn love? Skulls. So after you know, rampage through a little RTS battle, because Korn is not that hard to play because it's just a lot of murder melee units, you then can choose, hey, maybe I'm going to
skulls for the skull
throne because there's a lot of enemies here and that's a lot of skulls. And what do you do with skulls? Well, skulls are basically a currency. And the more skulls you get, you can then give said skulls to Korn itself because skulls are for the skull throne, and doing so gives you a temporary bonus to your army and your faction in general, because, you know, Korn's pretty happy with you. It felt great, where my entire purpose was right-clicking on things and seeing decisive victory and clicking auto resolve, and just watching as Skarbrand rips up everyone. Skulls were being taken, blood was being flown. It was majestic.
Maybe it could be a good idea to
leads
introduce
to
new
the
players
battles themselves.
to
A lot
Korn.
of the battles, I'm always very impressed with the volume of things going on. There are so many units in each of these different formations, and then just watching as they move around each individually and the animations they have to fight and to get back up, and watching Skarbrand just run in there and literally just kick these small mortals beneath him away, or watching as a cavalry charge just breaks through a line. It's really interesting to see. There's so much going on at once, but also not. When you scroll back, you can just kind of like observe your forces and watch the health bars dwindle and the leadership bars change, and just kind of get a nice overall look at the entire battlefield. But when you scroll in close, you just see chaos and murder and death, and it's super well animated, and some of the much larger creatures seem like they are equally well animated. It's something I haven't had the chance to try out too much of yet, but I want to see the really big, really crazy large characters that you can create. That terracotta warrior and Grand Cafe, or perhaps some of those.
I can't wait to get my hands on a terracotta warrior. They just look really cool. I think even in the new Shadows of Change DLC update, they had a new hero unit, was it? That's kind of like a terracotta warrior with a bow. It'll be interesting to try that out if we ever get that DLC someday. And the animations are cool, but I feel like a lot of the time when you're trying to micro your entire army, you don't really have the time to like appreciate it. You could maybe appreciate it through like a cinematic mode replay, maybe. But I've also seen mods that kind of improve like one-to-one combats between particular units, or the animations of them, I mean. And that could be pretty cool to have.
Giant ice bears of Kislev. I haven't gotten a chance to see much of that yet, but I want to like seeing them tear through just swaths the armies like Skarbrand does. Sounds like it'd be really darn cool. Luckily, and I was kind of surprised by this, I didn't really get any technical hiccups when I was in the RTS stuff. I had a couple bugs here and there and a little bit of frame rate stuff when I was in the overworld, but that's the overworld. I don't really mind that too much, because if there's a big frame rate drop and problems like that in the RTS stuff, that's so much more annoying. But I wasn't really seeing any, despite the volume of people and the fact that I run on a 1080 Ti. Trust me, I would try to get a better card if I could, but
you have a 1080 Ti?
So on a 1080.
What? Why is the performance so different? I have a 1050. Oh god, I'm struggling so much.
Ti, seeing all the units go through, it was pretty impressive. The processing power to have that many things fighting at once is quite something. But having that blend of fighting something, perhaps like assaulting any kind of city, and then knowing what to do with said city, and then adjusting technologies, leveling up the skill of your character. It really is this strategy on all these kinds of fronts, the 4X, the RTS, and even the character creation and building. It's a lot to it. It's a lot. I won't lie, I have a bit of information overload sometimes with it. There's a lot going on and a lot on the screen, but I feel like every time I jump into the campaign and play a little bit more, a little more of it is starting to make sense, and being able to handle everything at once is always the big detriment. I have that problem when I play a 4X game where I'll forget about something entirely, and I forget I need to be working on this. You know, you're trying to get all these resources, all this technology, and you always neglect something. Total War and some of the factions.
I'm so glad that in the bottom right, it just kind of tells you things that you could potentially do, but obviously it can't tell you every single thing. And there are times where even I forget to, like, you know, I was going to recruit some units during the end of this turn after the battle, but the game doesn't tell you that. So it's definitely a learning curve that you kind of have to stick with and make a bunch of mistakes and try again and fix them. The game certainly requires a pretty huge time investment to kind of get into. But honestly, I feel like it's super worth it. Well, I suppose it also depends on like your particular taste in games. But for me, yeah, this was a match made in heaven.
There are pretty interesting. They seem pretty unique, and the voice acting carries it, I think, quite a lot. I'm still rusty. I'm gonna need more time to really kind of get into it. But at the moment, it's a solid game. A lot of the overworld stuff is really good. The design, the visuals, the UI, the red on red, I'm not a big fan of, but overall, the characters,
thank goodness they changed
voice acting, and even the cutscenes you get before when you pick a campaign faction. There's a lot there, and personally, a strategy game, I think, kind of lives and dies by its visuals and voice acting, having you want to make units, not because the unit might be good, but because the unit might be cool. So yeah, Total War Warhammer 3. I like it. It's a lot, but I'm slowly kind of digesting it more and more, and I'm appreciating it as time goes on. If you're a fan of Warhammer Fantasy, I think it's an automatic buy because it's just so much there going for you. If you're a fan of 40K, I'd still recommend it just because you can try out the demons, and that might slowly push you into the other factions and maybe get you more into it. I'm not fully there yet, but playing the demons, I feel like it's a great part for, you know, stepping your toe into it, because 40K or fantasy, you know how Nurgle works. I think it's pretty solid. I think if you like the grand strategy genre, it is absolutely worth picking up. And like I said before, not only is it available on Steam, it's also available on the Xbox PC Game Pass system as well. You can go ahead and check out the instructions on how to get it on screen, and I will leave the same instructions in the description, as well as a link for you to pick it up for yourself. Like I said, this video was sponsored, but my opinions are of my own. That being said, pretty good timing for the sponsorship. And with that, thank you for watching this first impressions video. I know it's a little more bare bones, but that, like I said, it would take me tens to hundreds of hours to truly fully delve into this kind of game.
Especially with somebody new to the game.
I mean, that's what you got Mandalore for, so.
Yeah, exactly. Let's check out Mandalore. You know, for such a bare bones first impression kind of review, this was actually pretty insightful for somebody who's, you know, getting into this kind of game, or somebody relatively new to strategy games as a whole. When I first got into it, I kind of experienced and felt a lot of the same things that Bricky kind of said here in this video. Honestly, I'm kind of been thinking of like doing a video about it myself, but I don't know. It's just a thought I've been entertaining. I just think that Warhammer 3 is a really cool game, and I've been super enjoying it. I'd highly recommend it to anybody who's even remotely interested in strategy games. But you know, to each their own as well. As he said, there's a lot of information overload, and sometimes turns can take me like 30 to 40 minutes because it's just so much I have to read, you know, to get used to and to learn about a particular faction and the best way to play them. Like, we had to restart our Ikid Claw campaign because I kind of messed up on the campaign movement, and that's something that you don't really know unless if you have prior information, you know? Regardless, I think it's like 100% worth it to learn how to play the game, because there's just enjoyment. There's just so much fun to be had from it. But once again, that's just my opinion. Of course, if you guys want a more in-depth review, definitely check out Mandalore's channel. I did do a reaction to his review, but I highly recommend you check out his video first. And obviously, go and subscribe to Bricky. He's awesome. Thank you so much for watching. Catch you in the next one.